Are you interested in your productivity? If so, task management is probably an important component of what you consider to be your productivity stack, the everyday actions you take to do your best work. And I imagine that you have an interest in keeping your standards high. But maybe recently, like others, you've noticed that certain symptoms have crept back in. Feelings of overwhelm, perhaps some procrastination, a deadline or two missed, email overload, seeing your inbox sort of growing once again. And maybe these are symptoms that you thought you had conquered sometime in the past, but they've come back. As you look at the cause, where do these things come from? You may think that it's all because of COVID. The pandemic has made life difficult and you're no different from everyone else. Or you may think that it has something to do with not being disciplined and that you need to crack down and focus and concentrate. And that's what will pull you through. Well, I'd like you to consider a very different root cause. Consider that you were effective at some point in making improvements, especially early on in your career as a professional. And as you added changes, as you intervened and made a difference to the way you managed your tasks, the way you captured and processed and executed tasks in your calendar or on a list, you became more and more effective. In fact, you became so effective that you unwittingly, unconsciously decided, or didn't decide, but still did it anyway, you added more tasks. So it's a little bit like as if as you got more, as you became more strong, you're able to manage more tasks and you assigned yourself more tasks. And that went on in the background and you liked it because you were feeling more accomplished until you didn't. Because at some point, the volume of tasks increased to the point where it started to hit the capacity of your system. And then these feelings, these unwanted symptoms started to pop up again. So it's not to say that your gains weren't real, they were real. But what they led you to do was to manage more tasks than ever before. And that took away any buffer you had between the capacity of your new system and your task volume. And as the two started to coincide, all of a sudden problems started to happen. So maybe that's nothing to do with COVID and it's nothing to do with your personal discipline. It's just a fact. And maybe it's a feature of high performance where you're able to make more gains earlier on as a beginner in your career. But then over time, as you gain expertise, it's harder and more exacting and more difficult to make the same level of improvement. Let's call it the law of diminishing returns. And I'm going to say that it's a fact in every field of endeavor that in which you can improve your performance. That over time, as you become more capable, performance becomes harder and harder to accomplish. Dashing a little bit of type A tendency with kind of that ambition and drive and the energy. And if you're a creative person who's always thinking of problem solving and ideas and new things to try, this may happen even faster. Others may take a rest, but if you have just a little bit of type A ambition, it would happen. This would happen. The gap would close even faster. So, question is, if there's any truth to what I'm saying and if it applies to you, how do you get better? How do you make improvements on a regular basis? Well, this is where most people hit a snag because what they do is they take the way they learned to improve their productivity or make changes, positive changes to their task management. They use the approach they used as a beginner and they continue to use that same approach for too long. What do I mean by that? Well, early on, the first improvements that we made were guru led. So someone who had experience told us exactly what to do. And you know what? It worked. It was kind of, call it beginner's luck, but it was exciting to see how fast you could grow. And that feeling of making progress is probably why you're here listening to this video, because you remember what that was like and how awesome it felt to know that you're making solid progress. However, that approach of finding a guru who mandates some compulsory behaviors, and usually the guru says something along the lines of, don't change these behaviors, do it exactly as I'm telling you. The approach of finding someone and following them in that way works in the beginning. But once you grow past a certain point, it stops working. And even if they include, the case of task management, if they tell you which app to use, it still doesn't work. The behaviors and the app that they're recommending work for beginners. And you may have crossed the point where that kind of advice, that kind of specific, mandated, compulsory advice no longer works. And now you need a different approach. But you're not special. It's not as if you're different in this respect. If you look at high performers, they aren't all looking, Lewis Hamilton, Formula One driver, isn't out there doing Google searches for, who has the latest ideas in driving techniques for beginners. He's not reading a book on race driving or Formula One 101. No, it's he needs a very different approach. Tom Brady, Serena Williams, if you list the high performers in any discipline, they actually get away from coaches who tell them exactly what to do. And over time, they teach themselves how to do something very different. And the New Habits program is my opportunity in a couple of days, 2 half days, to teach you what they're doing so that you can do it for yourself, but not for driving cars or playing football or playing tennis, but in the area of your productivity, specifically your task management. So, what do I hope to teach you? How to self diagnose and assess your current system, whether you're someone who's been improving your system for task management for 20 years or 30 years, or maybe you just started last week, it doesn't matter. My goal is to teach you how to make the kind of diagnoses and improvements. So, what would it be like? Imagine, what would it be like if you had a way to gain some powerful insights into the state of your current system? That if those insights could tell you where you are on a spectrum of best in class um, examples or standards, and if you could take that understanding and then translate it into specific improvement opportunities, plans for where you could make precise improvements, and what would it be like to be on that kind of journey? Essentially, I'm inviting you to go on a journey with me to do exactly this, because this is what the top performers actually do for themselves. That's why they don't rely on any one coach. They eventually become their own coaches. They may take the input of other people, but they take the input of other people. It's not to find new compulsory and mandated activities. It's to help them to become better at assessing their own system. And that's what I propose to help you to do in the New Habits program that's coming up. So chances are you don't actually need a coach to give you prescriptions. Instead, you need the results of an analysis that can tell you where you are now and where you need to go. And hopefully that should be as painlessly as possible. And that's the process that we found here at My Time Design, Schedule You, and Two Time Labs. It's not about reading a book or spending a time in a classroom or hiring a personal trainer. Instead, over the past decade and a half, since 2007, we've taken hundreds of live trainees in face to face classrooms, old style, through the method of analyzing and understanding their systems so that they could move to the next level. And it doesn't matter whether you're doing it for the first time, this is the first time you're making any kind of improvement, or you're someone who's very seasoned. The approach is exactly the same. You start with this kind of analysis and then you move on to make improvements. But if you join me in the program, here's what you could expect. The most recent research shows that if you start with an in depth analysis of your current task management profile, you would cover 7 fundamentals out of the 13 that exist that we've discovered. And the 13 that we'll be ranking your skills in are capturing, emptying, tossing, acting now, storing, scheduling, and listing. So I'll show you, teach you how to interpret each behavior using a scale from low end to the high end of performance. Each one is actually broken down into sub behaviors. If you've read my book, you know that this is exactly what I describe in my book. And this evaluation is the first step, the first part of the ETAPS questions, ETAPS, where the first question is an evaluation question, where am I now? And in the subsequent steps, we ask, what's the new target you should set for yourself? That's the second step. How should you plan your improvements? The third step. And what kind of support do you need to implement that plan effectively so that at the end you have a new set of behaviors and new set of apps and devices that are there to support you. The good thing is that once you do this, you take this approach, you'll never want to go back to doing it the old way. You'll never want to look for a guru to tell you what to do because your analysis and your self diagnosis will always be better than something that someone who wants to give you one size fits all advice could possibly fit. Finally, this really is the only place that you can get this kind of training. As far as I know, we're the only school, the only training that offers this particular approach. And after you've done your analysis in the classroom, I'm going to invite you to join me and others in a learning community, people who are also assessing their task management skills. And that input can help you to not just plan, but also execute the changes that you want to make, the first change, the second change, the third change, fourth change. So you have a timeline of improvements that could go anywhere from a year to 2 years. So by the end of New Habits, you'd have practiced a brand new skill along with me and with others. And the program is designed for me to give you the best of what I have discovered in the last 20 years of being someone who's taught time management, first time management, then task management programs, and someone who wrote Perfect Time Based Productivity. But if we haven't met, I probably should have introduced myself at the beginning. Who am I? My name is Francis Wade, and I've spent the last several years in the area of task management and time blocking. I'm an alumnus of AT&T Bell Labs, which is a research institution, but I worked in their systems engineering department. And I've also taught research at the MBA level, doing all of this after graduating from Cornell in operations research and industrial engineering. But back when I started teaching task management and time management in the late 90s, I noticed that people really didn't take to the one size fits all kind of thinking. They wanted to customize what I was telling them. At first, I resisted. I didn't know any better. I used to teach them to follow me, and because it was, I was the guru. But 20 years later, you and I now know better that people need custom solutions. But back then, I kind of gave up teaching for a few years because I got tired of that approach, didn't know what else could work. And then I moved to Jamaica from the US and really struggled in that environment. As an operations researcher, as I said, I did the right thing. I went and did some academic research, eventually piloted the first New Habits training in 2007, and then wrote Perfect Time Based Productivity. But check out the testimonials on this page, and you'll find, people who have shared what it's been like taking this approach and using it to make steady improvements. And as you could imagine, they are all accustomed to doing this analysis, thinking of what's next for them, and then making what we call Pareto improvements. The 20% of improvements that produce 80% of the results, the high leverage changes. And that way they can ignore all of the bright, shiny objects, bright, shiny improvement objects that are floating around out there in blogs and podcasts um, in advertisements from developers, and just focus on the changes that they need to make, kind of like a laser focus. So if you're interested and ready to be excited again about the improvements you can make, the improvements that only you can make, the unique improvements that only you can make, New Habits can help you do that. So the available dates are on this page. I invite you to join us in the next training. And the training is 2 half days, 3.5 hours each. It's live virtual, which means that you can be anywhere in the world. Typically, 3.5 hours on each day, with a break in between just to give us a chance to recoup and come back. And in the training, I give you all the forms you need. I give you games to play. I show you how to do this self diagnosis. And afterwards, you get the opportunity to join a community of other learners who are on a very similar path. Plus, I'm throwing in a few bonuses. You'll be able to use our rapid assessment program to do an assessment in 20 minutes that'll give you a very rough idea of your first profile. We'll refine it as we get into new habits, but you'll do that before the class even starts. I'll also give you a digital and audio copies of my book. And we also have a support webinars throughout the year for folks who have taken this program. And on top of that, we offer a 100% money back guarantee within the first 15 days. Just in case you're not happy with any reason, I really don't want to take your money and have you be unhappy and not having accomplished what you wanted to. So you will be able to get a full refund. So I hope you join me in this live virtual training. It's the first one I'm offering to a of this length and duration to an extended audience. And just click on the order button below on this page. And I hope to see you in the program. Take care. See you inside.